Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Robert Antwin, and along with
Constance Carter,
and we believe that for every situation,
there is a conversation.
And this evening, family, we just want to come to you and have a conversation, unscripted even. And y'all know that we come to you every Friday at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time and 3 p.m. on the West Coast. But we come to you with our minds filled with so many thoughts and our hearts being heavy with some of the tragedies that are facing the world today. In less than, I'd say, 30 days, we've seen America's brightest and best lose their lives at the hands of people that had guns when they were without guns. We lost a brother, we lost a father, we lost a son, we lost a daughter, we lost a auntie, we lost a cousin, we lost a friend, all because of the color of their skin. And I don't know about you, Constance, but I don't know how to feel about it, but what I do know how to do is to talk about it. And for those who don't know, Sister Brianna lost her life. Brother Ahmad and Brother George, they all lost their lives senselessly. And when they woke up in the morning, they had no idea that they would die at the hands of a person of non-melanin descent. We even saw a brother in New York Central Park, bird watching of all things. I don't know how he came to be in that field of study, but that is his jam, that's his thing. He was just watching birds, and he had a young female pretend to be attacked and call 911. And seemingly his crime would have been in the park while black. That would have been his crime. Thank God for cell phones capturing a lot of the atrocities that are happening in the world today. But you know how we do, Constance. I just want to talk about it.
Yeah, Rob, it bothers me so much that I try to stay away from the headlines. And one of the reasons is because we know that it happens so much. And it happens so often, and it's been going on for so long. And just like who was that? Will Smith said the only thing that's changed is the fact that we have cell phones, the fact that we have cameras. I recall uncles and my father saying that they were pulled over for fitting the description. Family members being beat. I have a cousin that was 13 years old that was beat by the police in San Jose, brutally beaten, brutally attacked by the police. Thank God they ended up firing him. One of the police officers ended up committing suicide, and the other police officer ended up almost getting a job at another police department that actually was an area that had a lot of black people. And they were like, "Oh yeah, you're perfect for the job. You're perfect." So and there was no, this is when so my cousin was 14, so I was 13 at the time this happened. So this has been going on for so long. When you hear rappers like NWA talking about it, they were talking about what was going on in the streets, and people didn't believe it, and they didn't start to believe it until we started to see cell phone footage. When we saw Rodney King, it was just this huge outrage, and people act like it was brand new, and we knew. And within our communities, because of stories that we heard and experiences that we had, we knew what was going on. It was just that the outside world got a chance to look inside what a lot of us had already experienced, especially Black men. And it's really painful. It's really painful. I try not to even look at the headlines because it's so painful. It bothers me so much. I have 3 sons, and it's scary as hell to think that my sons could eat, no matter how well mannered they are, no matter how high they pants is up to they neck, no matter if they are the most well-mannered kids, no matter how much money I have in the bank, that once they go outside, they're still considered a threat.
Yeah.
Even though I've taught them everything, their father has taught them everything. We pour into them, and we pour into them, and we know that they're good kids. Somebody's not going to look at them that way. They're going to look at them as a criminal, and it's scary.
Yeah.
Super
Yeah. And the tragedy, which has been rehearsed more than once, is that even after the Emancipation Proclamation happened in the 1800s, we've gone through Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Movement. We think that we've come so far away from so much bigotry being on full display. For years, that bigotry was put up on a shelf. They put sheets over their faces. They hid behind rules and laws that they made, 3 strikes and so on. But now the ugly head of racism and bigotry is commonplace, and it's almost acceptable, all wrapped up in WP. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's white privilege. And that part. Anytime you can weaponize a 911 phone call to your benefit, knowing that the suspect is a number 1 male, and they the repercussion of what's going to happen. That's a sad day in America. But the question that I have for anybody who's listening in the feed, what's happening, Brandy Cox and Valicia? Please share this video out. Tell a friend that Conversation Starters is on, and we certainly want to engage you, talk to you, chop it up with you, and find out where you are in society, because it means enough for us to sit down and talk about it. We often do it in barbershops. We do it at picnics, and we're doing it on the cell phone and even on social media, but we just want to verbalize this thing and put it out. The question that I have, Constance, that I'm really, really interested in, what's happening, James, is are you satisfied that the perpetrators of these atrocities and killing a unarmed Black man and for making a false 911 call, are you happy that those people have been terminated from their places of employment? Is that enough?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely yes, or absolutely not?
Absolutely no. I'm hearing some feedback over there. I don't know if you have me on multiple devices, but absolutely not. I mean, number one, the young brother, what was his name? Ahmad. Those guys didn't even get arrested until the social media outrage. And that's one of the things that I'm sick of. I'm sick of it's like a fake social media outrage, right? Everybody's posting them on their pages, and everybody's up in arms, and then next month, when it's all said and done, you ain't gonna be thinking about them no more. You know what I mean? It's like, here we go again. If you was really concerned, like, George Zimmerman is still walking the streets.
That part. Now that part right there, more than these 3 things that have happened. So here's something we talked about. Check this out, y'all. Here is a man, George Zimmerman, who killed a teenage boy, and he's still walking the streets
and causing trouble.
And causing trouble and doing it out loud. But we got all the boys banging in the hood over a color and killing them nonstop. But y'all letting George walk free, and I'm certainly not.
Y'all ain't made no stop by George Zimmerman's house.
Yeah, nobody stopped by his house. I'm not advocating murder or retribution in any way, but I'm simply saying, though, how is it that we continue to build the statistics where people of color are always on the front page being murdered, but some of the perpetrators that we know of that this crime is still walking free and flaunting about it? What's happening, Sherman? What's going on, my man? Long time no hear. Glenda says, heck no, it's not enough that the white perpetrators were fired from their jobs. Brandy Cox says, absolutely not. Well, you know what? I would say that it is a start. It is a start. For many, many years, when something like this happened, it took a march, a protest, a boycott. Before they would even consider the matter. So,
but listen here. This country has a history, and this is what pisses me off so badly about this, is because the country, you know, they talk about the country was built on freedom, the religious freedoms and all that BS, but this country was built on brutalizing people that were minorities. This country, you know, after the emancipation, when you talked about it, they had what were called black codes. They would criminalize black people for just hanging out, what they call loitering, so that they could put them in jail for life, so that they can continue to work for free. Because, you know, the 13th Amendment said that slavery was free except by if they were imprisoned, right? So now we have slavery that's legal. So we've been, the history of this country has been legalizing slavery of black people since then, criminalizing black people since then. Now, we have never been the source of the threats in this country because we have been brutalized. We have been, you know, we have been ravaged and raped and accused. You know, you got a 13-year-old boy who's barely big enough to sit in an electric chair who gets executed for a crime he didn't commit. You have the Tulsa riots that these people made up a whole lie about some boys and to come over and kill a thriving community. Right. I mean, it's just that we have been brutalized, but yet we are the ones that are always at the end of thinking that of being criminalized. We're brutalized, but we've been criminalized. And I'm sick and tired of it, but I'm also sick and tired of the fake outrage. I'm sick and tired of the temporary protests, online protest. It's good that everybody's saying something and they're bringing awareness. Now, if nobody had said anything on social media about the brother Ahmaud, his killers would still be out there free chilling because nobody did anything until everybody started protesting. So that's great, wonderful, right? But what happens next month when all this stuff dies down? You're gonna go back to your normal everyday lives. You're gonna be chilling, and you're not gonna know. And nobody's gonna say anything about what's been going on. And this has been consistent. It's this pattern that happens over and over again. And quite frankly, I'm sick of it. So we have to start taking people to task on, you know, the racism. We have to start doing more. So my question to everybody is, what more can we be doing to prevent this from happening? What more can we do?
You know, I'll take that on and raise my hand. And if you're out there in the feed, please tell us your opinion so we can allow you to be a part of the conversation. But with regard to what we can do, we need to be more engaged with the legislative process. Everybody wants to know who's in the White House, but everybody needs to know conjunction, junction, what's your function? I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. Schoolhouse Rock told me that those that are in the legislative body, they actually make the laws by which we need to abide by and live by. Those laws were also part of the 13th Amendment that you talked about. So we need to be actively engaged in our government. We need to take a stronger footprint in the judicial part of the government. There's the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. But
come on, history lesson.
We're underrepresented. So Black people make up, I believe one time I looked at, it's like 17% of the population, right? But they only make up 9% of the entire elected officials in the Senate and the House of Representatives.
But what percentage do we make up in the criminal justice system?
Probably like 74%, somewhere in that ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
That part.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way to reverse that truly, in addition to being empowered economically, is to be a part of the legislative process. Outside of that.
But I mean, but think about this, Rob. So think about Ferguson, right? So after Ferguson happened, the federal government, who was it? They did a study on, you know, what was going on in Ferguson. They did a study to see how they were criminalizing Black people. They see this. They have the whole study on it, right? So you can go and you can look at it, and it shows systematic racism all up and through, right? It's there, right in their hands. They did the study. What do you think happened as a result of that study?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. So what are we supposed to do about that?
Listen, real quick, I just want to shout out Charles Johnson, who says the value of Black lives is so low that people can see our struggle, hear our cries for help, and still do nothing. He said that nothing has changed. Change for us will happen when we collectively come together, raise one voice, not in protest of acts committed, but in demands for justice through our votes, hello, and through our dollars. So I am
Listen,
a big proponent of that, Charles. High five, social distance and all. I do believe that economically, you can get somebody's attention when you start digging in their pocket. And you certainly get the attention of the entire nation when you vote. Whatever side of the aisle you decide to be on, Republican or Democrat or somewhere in between, your vote matters.
listen.
And that's why I don't have a problem with what P. Diddy said. One last thing,
Oh, you're
what
right
P.
about
Diddy
that.
said that we shouldn't just give our vote to the Democratic candidate. We need
Better
to
work for it.
find out something that aligns with our wants and needs economically and socially within our communities, so that we can affect change in a real and a relevant way, more so than just T-shirts being made and "We shall overcome" marches and
Hashtags. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh, 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 and it was funny because people were so mad at Diddy for saying that. They was pissed. But now, when Joe Biden said, "You ain't black if you don't vote for me," now everybody want to say something. But Charles, what you said was so profound, brother. You want to hop on here with us? Because I would like to actually see his face, hear his voice, and I want him to dialogue with us because I think what he said was so profound. So I want to, if you have a little bit of time, I'm going to send you the link, and if you could jump on here, Charles, with us, I would love to have you on here and just dialogue with you on this because I think you have a great perspective, and I really want to hear, I want to hear from strong black men. I want to hear from people who are not black as well. Because one of the biggest things is, if you're not saying anything, if you are silent to the issue, then you are also complicit.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so because because you're not directly affected and you're silent by it, you're actually perpetuating what's going on.
yeah,
And I think that more people have to start having a voice. More people who are not of African descent or of melanin descent need to start having a voice and start speaking up. And that's the only way that we were able to even, end slavery, because the abolitionists were non-black. And the
yeah,
only way we were able to get our freedom was because we had allies, and we need more allies. We need more people speaking up to say, listen, this is not right. We need more people to say, yeah, we do got privilege. We need more people to say, when they changed the narrative about what Homeboy had did, what's the 49er name? Colin Kaepernick.
yeah,
Yeah, they changed what he did was in protest of what's been happening. But they turned it around and act like it was about a flag and it was about disrespecting the military. And it was very clear on what his protest was. But of course, they had to change the narrative, and they just picked up on it, and they were just, yeah, that's what it is. And this man lost millions of dollars as a result for protesting for people that look like you, Robert. I know you have the lighter hue, but at the end of the day, black is black is black, and you're
yeah.
gonna get pulled over just like our dark skinned brothers. You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
don't get
just for
past
the
this.
record, yeah, just for the record, while everybody's watching on the screen, I am darker than Constance, even though she keeps calling me light skinned. But seriously, I think that, instead of us being so quick to get a new avatar on Facebook, instead of us being so quick to be a part of every challenge that comes out on Facebook and getting every app with TikTok and spending our money on things that give us no value economically, we should be able to control the narrative, because the
Yeah.
Colin Kaepernicks of the world would be just a footnote if we were in more of a position to control the narrative. So with those same cell phones that we make videos with, we should take the time to do something like what we're doing right now to speak to injustice. We should take the time to use our cameras to be able to film positivity happening in our communities. If
Yeah.
Fox, NBC, and ABC won't show young black men who are graduating at a higher rate at a high school,
Part.
we need to be filming that ourselves and making our own documentaries so
Yes.
that it will be a part of mainstream story, because he who controls the narrative controls history. Ask the American Indians about
Right.
their place in history. they were Native Americans, but I think it's in February we celebrate an Italian that came here on accident, and he wasn't the first person to discover America. He actually discovered somewhere else, but
He was actually a
because
Spaniard.
yeah, because they control the narrative.
Right.
It stopped being history and it started being his story.
His story. You're
That's
right.
That's
I
right.
want to I want to acknowledge Thomas Hawkins, who's on your thread. Hey, Charles, we're gonna bring Charles on in a minute. Thomas Hawkins said we have to first respect each other as Black folks. They see us treating each other like shit, so why have respect for us? Just like the N-word. The first thing they said was they call each other the N-word, so why is it a problem for us to use the N-word? That's what Charles Hawkins said. So I'm gonna bring Charles. I want to bring Charles Johnson on here. There he is. I want to put him right in the middle. And I want to see, listen, Thomas Hawkins, I'm going to read his statement again, Charles. Thomas said, we have to first respect each other as Black folks. They see us treating each other like shit, so why have respect for us just like the N-word? The first thing they said was they call each other the N-word, so why is it a problem for us? What do you think of that? What do you think Black people saying, hey, we call each other the N-word, so we don't respect each other, so why should they?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we're in a position where we have to move past that, right? Like I get it and it makes sense. I to some degree I agree with that. Where, yeah, we do degrade each other in a lot of different ways, but that doesn't solve our problem, And the reality is that right now we have to put ourselves in a position to be able to solve our problems. There's a million different things wrong with us, things that we got to get together. But we're just people, just like everybody else, right? We're not talking about white issues and the things that they got going on and how they treat each other when stuff happens. We're not talking about how Chinese treat each other when things happen. We're not talking about how Hispanics do that. We always bring that up when it's a Black problem. And I think that that's part of the issue, is that we're not centralized enough to say, hey, look, we're okay to disagree on some things. We're okay to not be perfect people, but that doesn't mean that we're any less human or we deserve any less treatment than anybody else. And I think we got to really start looking at that holistically and say, put our differences aside for a moment and let's figure out a way to attack our problems. Let's figure out a way to organize ourselves so that way when we do make our voice known to everybody else, that it's heard. Our problems, they need to kind of stay in house a little bit. If we disagree sometimes, that thing needs to be something that we disagree with amongst ourselves.
Like your mama said, don't be putting our business in the street.
Yeah, but when we deal with issues globally that are dealing with African Americans and people of color, we need to have a united voice and stand strong on that front, even if we don't all the way agree with it. Sometimes that'll put us in a better position than where we are today. It's funny because I'm listening to all of the different arguments that are happening, and there's so many. One of probably the most ignorant statements I heard today was about child support in this situation, and I'm like, well, what does that got to do with the cost of tea in China? But that's how distracted we become when issues arise, and we don't have an opportunity to really faithfully commit to a process or an idea or anything that would allow us to turn a corner. And that's where we have to focus at.
Yeah, Charles, I mean, what you said was so poignant. I just want to acknowledge some of the people that's watching this out there in the feed. Lynn Davis, what's going on? What's happening? Melva Jones, Cuzzo, Barry Matthews, Thomas Hawkins. I want to make sure that we are all joining in on this conversation. This is Robert Antoine and Constance Carter, along with Charles Johnson, on Conversation Starters. And we're talking about the tragedy that is happening right before our very eyes. 30 days have passed, and in 30 days, 3 Black lives have been taken. It's not enough to just say that Black lives matter, but one question that I'd like to hear from everybody in the feed, if you could just answer the officers who were involved with the George Floyd murder, they were terminated. The young lady who made the false 911 call in New York City Central Park, she was fired. Is that enough for you to say that we're moving in the right direction? We've marched, we've sang, we've made T-shirts, and we've had all types of protests and movements. But and usually nothing happens. But in record time, even though it took a video to get to this place, there have been terminations. There have been acts that seem to be in retribution to some of the things that have been perpetrated. So I want to hear. Constance wants to know. Charles wants to know. We want to know, is that enough? Is that a step in the right direction, or is that a slap in the face? Are we being coddled? Are we being hoodwinked or bamboozled by these terminations of people that have perpetrated these atrocities on our people? Because somebody's brother, somebody's sister, somebody's cousin, somebody's son has lost their lives at the hands of a white person who was armed. But there is something to be said, and we want to hear from you.
Well, I have a question. But before I ask my question, Olivia Marie said, "Life without parole. If a cop becomes a criminal, she doesn't get a free pass due to his occupation." Well, it should be. So I agree. So you have this blue wall of silence, right? And you have these cops protecting each other, and you have no accountability when they do things that they're not supposed to be doing. When they do commit crimes, they're a gang. They're a gang, and they're acting like gang members. And they're not being held accountable and responsible. And so, the first part is, stop letting these cities and these states control whether these people are criminalized or not. The federal government needs to step in and start putting everybody in prison. Because if the cities are not going to do it, if the states are not going to do it, then somebody needs to step in and do it. That's number one. Number two, my question to you is, should Black people, and I know you agree with this, Charles, because we've had these conversations, do we need to start arming ourselves?
Absolutely. I think that that's a proactive step. I think we have to be mindful in some manner, right? Because the reality is, in most communities, we can't take on the whole police force, or we can't take on an army, right? So we have to be mindful of how we do that. But I believe that we should. I do. I believe that we should. And I believe that we should exercise our rights the same way that other people exercise theirs, right? And I don't think that there should be any difference there. I think that we need to take up arms, and we need to start learning different methods of defending ourselves and protecting our women, protecting our children, protecting our community. I think that we need to become that proactive group to do that for ourselves, and not wait on everybody else to kill us off or to do whatever else that they're going to do. And that's just kind of, it's almost like a reality in and of itself. There's absolutely no reason for a police officer with other police officers there to be that afraid to where you have to use that kind of deadly force. And then what bothers me more is the method in which it was done, right? Like, that did not need to be done. For the amount of time that it was done, it's ridiculous. And
Charles, not to cut you off real quick. So Thomas Hawkins, he does agree that we do need to take up arms and like you said, Charles, exercise our constitutional rights. But he said something that many people have echoed, that once our people began to take on arms, that will definitely get the gun laws to change.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That part.
Yeah. Soon as people that look like you start taking up arms.
Yeah. Because you remember, if you know anything about the historical part of this.
In California.
That happened in California. Real seriously, when the Black Panthers started moving around with all of these guns, the laws quickly changed.
They did.
When Black people were free, immediately after that, we had the invention of the handgun. So, there's a lot of different things that have happened around that. And I think that, again, but that's action, right? That's not us protesting. That's not us saying that we're going to stand still and go to church and pray to God and cry and do all of these other things. They're saying, no, we're taking a proactive step to protect ourselves because you swore to protect us and you have failed to do your job.
Sounded like Brother Malcolm.
I love that. Real quick, y'all. Taisha Grady says that's a tricky question because no matter the consequences, it will never change someone's heart. She also says that all consequences will do is make some folks hide how they really feel, better. They have to want to change and treat people with respect. So I'm just going to say to you, Taisha, that we're losing the respect game because when you show up with a gun and I show up with my skin, the level of respect tends to change. It will only change when you have a gun and I have a gun. Then we're on equal footing and we can have a real conversation. So I totally agree.
Y'all having gunfights? Like, what are y'all gonna do? I got a gun, you got a gun. What are we doing?
No, let me say this to you. There's a reason why in the 1980s, the United States were in an arms race with their adversary, Russia. The reason why we kept building arms is to make sure that there was equal footing on the global nuclear weapon stage, that I have just as much as you have. And even if you have 100 more than I do, because we have the same thing, we're on the same level and we having the same conversation. For those countries that do not have nuclear arms or did not have nuclear arms at that time, they were overrun, overtaken, and you saw America occupy some of those areas. The same thing with Russia because they had the upper hand with their weaponry. So I'm not advocating that we go back to the wild, wild west, but you have a right as a citizen. If you don't have I think it's a felony, right, Charles? You can own a firearm.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So if Brother Ahmad had a firearm, do you think he would be dead?
I think they would have thought.
I don't know what would have happened.
I think they would have thought twice. I think is if you see somebody, if you running up and you see somebody with a gun and you pull out your gun, it becomes a quicker question. I think that would have shifted the way that transaction happened. I don't know that it would have changed the outcome. But I think definitely that there would have been a different thought process.
Sure,
but
because I know for those of you, Constance, Charles, y'all came up in the same era when y'all remember the scene from Boys in the Hood when Ice Cube and the crew, they were on Crenshaw and somebody came up trying to start some mess. Ice Cube raised up his T-shirt and said, "We got a problem here." That changed the outcome. That changed the narrative. And maybe that's a negative example, but I can tell you that if we are equal, it changes the outcome simply by the level of force that the other person may or may not use based on what somebody else has. We want to say what's up to Dawn Bates. She says that she is not interested in changing them any longer. The focus has been modified to protecting ourselves, because they will not change. So her message to everybody listening is that she's not interested in having them to change their minds. She wants to make sure that she is protected because she knows that the other side will not change.
And I think that that's our obligation as men.
Yeah.
I think this is the place where we actually really do need to step up. And we need to really start to have these conversations collectively amongst one another to say, hey, what can we do as men to make sure that our women and children are protected? I think that that's what we are supposed to do as men. And we need to find a way. We need to find a way. I'm a history buff like you a little bit. I love the Deacons of Defense. I love that method. I love the Black Panthers. I love that method. I love the Mau Mau's. I love that method. So I think that right now we need to find our focus as men, and we need to come together and we need to say, hey, look, the reality is that we see what's going on an everyday basis, right?
Yeah, check this out, Charles. Not to interrupt, but Lynn Davis says, I didn't even think about this. To your question, Constance, should Ahmad have had a gun? She says, I believe that had he pulled a gun, they would have shot him, and it would have been justified by those two white men because it would have fit the narrative.
I was thinking the exact
number
same
one
thing.
Black male with weapon, we were defending ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just the thing.
But it's a situation. I mean, because you got killed, he got shot anyway, right? Yeah. So it's a no-win situation, and that's the position that.
Yeah, but not only would he have gotten shot, though, Charles, he would have also been criminalized, right? Yeah. So if he had a gun, they would have said, "Oh, we shot him because," and they wouldn't have been convicted. And so, so if the situation was different, then always at the tail end of the stick is us as being even with every time we are the victims, we are looked at as the criminals. Everybody that gets not everybody, but when you see a Black man getting shot, they're going to show his mug shot, right? The victim. They're going to show his mug shot, but the perpetrator, they're going to show college picture, they're going to show, you know, him with his family. He was a good guy. We've been criminalized enough to, we know, we ain't stupid. That black man had a gun and they shot him. It was because he had a gun and he was up to no good, unfortunately.
Yeah. And what I think about Constance and Charles is that, do you know how many times in my life, in the past 10 years, I've walked into a model home with no furniture in it. I'll just walk through just to see the layout and the design. I mean, I'll still do that to this day, but after the Ahmaud thing, I may think twice about it, because I still want to make it home alive to see my young son, and to be able to see my daughters, and to see my family and my friends. And I don't want that, you know, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Listen, you know, just having to think differently as a black person, right? I remember we were getting a SUV, and I was at the car lot, and we had a minivan for a very long time. And I was telling the sales guy, I was saying, look, you know, we got to be very careful with the type of car we get, right? Because we get a certain kind of car, my husband is going to be a target, basically. And the guy was like, no, he was Middle Eastern. I feel so bad for you. Why? Because that's just our reality. We have to think about things that other people don't think about. I can't get a sports car, because when I had a sports car, I was getting pulled over for driving while black, right? So I got to make sure. So when we got the minivan, the tickets fell out. There were no more tickets. So we were like, okay, what kind of car, you know? We have to think about those things a lot differently than a lot of people do, because of who we are. And so, you know, coming, you know, just living there while black, we got to think differently than everybody else. And that's what privilege is. You ain't got to think about what kind of car you're going to drive. You don't got to think of if you're going to get pulled over more because you have this. You don't got to think of, oh shit, I can't wear my hoodie because they're going to think I'm a criminal. Oh shit, I'm going to the store, they think I'm stealing. Right? I come from the gym, I go to the store, run to the store because I got on my sweats, and I'm getting followed in the store because you think I'm about to be stealing. Like, I could buy everybody in this damn store, right? But because of the color of my, I mean, that's just real. Let's play fat.
Listen.
You know what I'm saying? But I mean, they don't know that.
Here's a question, and that's a great point, Constance, Charles, for Antonio, Caruth, Melva, Felicia Ferguson, and Shalonda Robinson. Here's the question that I want to ask you, and I want somebody to respond in the feed. And Charles, I definitely want to hear your take on this. But all of us have heard somebody that's white say, I have black friends. So my question to you is, we talk about it amongst ourselves. Is this subject too painful, too powerful, too raw, too real to discuss with your white friends? I'm asking anybody in the feed, anybody who's watching, are you brave enough, are you bold enough to have this real, raw conversation with your white friends?
Absolutely.
And have the dialogue and hear the response. More importantly, is that something that is relevant to you? And will you do that? I want to hear from the feed, but I especially want to hear from you, Charles.
Wow. So I will say this with regards to having that conversation. I can have the conversation with you. I don't know how impactful that conversation will be. I don't think you'll ever understand how afraid black men are when they see a cop ride behind them, and how often we'll quickly turn on our blinker and try to get out of that lane, or any of the anxieties that come with being in that position. You know, I would want you to understand. I want to tell you that story, and I want you to feel it. And I'm pretty sure to some degree you may, but I don't think you'll ever get it. Not that way. I don't know that other ethnicities get that type of anxiety. You know, I imagine that, you know, it's almost the same as when a person of Islamic faith wears their hijab, or, you know, something of that matter, how they must feel when they walk into a room, or when they get on an airplane, or whatever else the case may be. I know that there's other you know, ways that happens, but speaking to somebody who never had that experience, I don't think that you can really fully understand the gravity of it.
Now, you know what, Charles? There are people. I have white friends too, but I have white friends that, like, I have a friend named Annie. Annie, her sole purpose in life, and if you listen to Annie, shout out to Annie. I met her on the Lisa Nichols campus, but her sole purpose in life is to show white people how they are privileged and how they can change. Right? So she knows, and there are people like that. And I'm fortunate to have been raised in San Jose, California, which is, California is one of the most liberal states. San Jose is a very liberal place, and I was raised in a place where I know a lot of my friends, they have the same thought process as me. Now, when I moved to Stockton, it was like I moved back 50 years, but I digress. There are people that I believe that we can have that conversation with that are not afraid to take on those courageous conversations because they're very necessary. And I think the only way that we're going to change their mind or the narrative is if they understand it and they can share it with their friends and family, because they can share it in a way with their friends and family that we can't, because they're looking at it, they're defensive. Their defenses are privilege. I don't got no privilege. They can't even see that not having to get pulled over, or not having to worry about certain things is privilege. I don't understand that. But the only way they will is if somebody who looks like them can share. Here's, this is why you can empathize. Some people just can't empathize with people because they don't share their experiences. So they need people.
There was an experiment done, and I forget the older lady's name. She's a Caucasian lady.
Yeah.
That experiment in the classroom where she was going through, how it feels to be Black. And, I think that type of experiment, you really get the treatment, right?
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. Like,
yeah.
I can empathize with it, but when you actually experience it, it becomes a whole nother situation.
Yeah.
Something that you have to deal with from a very different perspective and really kind of try to understand and then think about how can I make this adjustment.
Charles, let me ask you this, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you are a stately, chocolate Black man, very intelligent, right? People don't know how smart you are, but when you walk down the street or when you walk in a room, you become that scary Black guy.
Absolutely.
So for you, how does that feel? Knowing that, look, I wouldn't hurt nobody. I'm this. You're not docile. You're very strong, and I love that about you. And you're very intelligent, very wise, very smart.
Thank you.
Very intuitive about who you are. Very purposeful. You walk with confidence, but you're also the boogeyman for a lot of people.
Yeah. It was funny. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine once. I used to be like the super pro Black dude. I went to A&T. So when I went there, I became like everything Black to the 10th power.
Jesus.
and I had a conversation with a friend of mine. We were in Portland, and we were talking about this whole Black-white issue. And she said, you know what? The reality is that you still got to work with them. You still got to deal with them. You still got to do different things. I think it was at that point where I had to shift a little bit and say, you know what? I have to look at things a little bit differently, and I have to attack these situations a little bit differently, because the first thing that they see when they see me is my presence. And whatever environment they come from, there's an assumption with that. So I use my words to change the narrative. But, sometimes we don't get that opportunity. But yeah, absolutely. I feel it every single time. I've had opportunities where I've gone into rooms with people and they're surprised that I can speak articulately or can say anything intelligent.
Sure.
So I definitely I identify with it, and it bothers me to some degree. I think what bothers me more is that I have to teach my sons how to navigate this life this way, and I hate that. I hate that for them, because they don't understand it, right? Because they get to play with these same kids, they get to, do all the other things that the other kids get to do. But then there's a point when you get a little older that all of that stuff is going to change and shift, and son, you have to be prepared for that. And I hate that. I hate that for them. And that's the part that bothers me most. And I've learned to deal with it, right? But I hate having to have that conversation with my son about making sure that you're not on the phone with somebody at an unreasonable hour that don't look like you, because you don't know what their father or what they're going to say. And because my history has told me that the rape card gets played a lot, and you don't want to be a part of that culture. And you might be innocent, but who knows? And I tell him sometimes, I have to tell him, it's unfortunate that, the reality is that your friends might not think that way, but that doesn't mean that their parents don't.
Right.
Yeah, so, that part.
Yeah, there's a lot to that.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge Shalonda Robinson, who's watching out there in the feed. Thank you, Felicia Ferguson and Brandy Cox. Shalonda said, I had another white friend that I made a post, and she gets it, and said that she would stand up if she ever saw any person of color being mistreated, and I applaud her for that. So shout out to all our white friends that actually would stand in the fight, stand in the struggle. But I think that the resounding majority, Charles, of the folks who are listening to this feed tonight, they still have the bottom line. I don't think they would get it. We want to say what's up to Miss Queen Gray, who said that she had to have the conversation when her son was identified as a slave in class because he was the only black kid. And that's some real tough stuff, y'all. But I do agree with you, Brother Charles. You have to have the conversation.
Wait. Hold on.
We got to educate our black boys and girls.
Do you understand? I would have set that whole classroom, the school, and everybody would have got set off in their feet. My son is a slave. Woo! I just felt a little heat just come over on me on that. Woo,
really? Yeah, that's one thing I will say. Typically, I know some administrators, and y'all gonna be mad at me, and I'm just gonna give it to you raw, and I'm gonna give it to you real. There are a lot of administrators who are angry at some of our single black parents who come in with the attitude because they never think their little Johnny is guilty of this or that. However, the ultimate point that I want to make is that we need to represent ourselves in the schools so that we can hold our teachers accountable for the education that they're providing for our sons and our daughters. And as long as we stay absent and we say, I graduated from school, I don't want to see school until graduation, then you are contributing to the ignorance and the atrocity that continues to repeat itself in the classroom and with the way that some of our teachers are teaching our sons and daughters, because any teacher that would allow any kid to be labeled a slave for any reason, that is breaking news right there in and of itself.
And I think further, even what you're saying, it changes the narrative dramatically when you show up.
Yeah.
They respect you, respect your child that much more. I remember a situation, we live in Lathrop, and the majority, there's not a lot of people that look like us where we live at. And I had an incident with my son's principal. And, she tried to call my son a liar. And I said, well, I don't know about how you deal with children, but my son doesn't lie to me. And I said, we have that type of relationship to where if I ask him something, he's going to tell me the truth. And naturally he does, right, wrong, or indifferent. He's ready to deal with it, but we're going to operate in honesty. And when I told her that, and I asked to speak to my son in front of her with her on the phone, I asked the questions and he gave it to me, what he did wrong, what he did right, and what he could have did differently. And I let her see the dynamics between my son and me so that she would understand that you're not just dealing with any old kid. You're not dealing with what you would classify as a typical black child. This child has a father in his life. He's active, he's intelligent, and my son is intelligent. And we have a different perspective of how we think of things. And ever since then, she's treated me a whole lot differently. I think, but that's an important piece. We have to be present in every single element and aspect of our child's life. To let people know that we are available and we are here, and we don't necessarily blame the teachers or everybody else for what the child does, but we're going to hold everybody accountable. We're going to hold our children accountable. We're going to hold the teachers and the administrators accountable.
We have to.
Yeah.
Well, I think this entire conversation, at the end of the day, wherever you stand, whatever spectrum you're on. That one word, Charles, is prevalent and it's not utilized enough, and that's accountability, right? Every morning I tell my son, you have choices that you make, and you are judged by the choices that you make. In the morning, you can choose coffee, tea, juice, whatever it is. That's a choice you make. When you go outside and you decide to speak or not speak, that's a choice you make. When you decide to go to class or not go to class, that's a choice you make. But whatever choice you make, there's an equal and opposite accountability to what it is that you do. And the people that enacted these atrocities against my sister Brianna, my brother George, my brother Ahmad, there needs to be accountability. And we need to make sure that we're at the forefront to demand accountability. In addition to the conversation, in addition to the talking, accountability is what will get my attention. And
So
we
my
need to continue the conversation with our sons and our daughters.
But my question goes back to, what do you guys think it is? Because I brought up guns. Do we need guns? Brother Robert, you said, we need to be voting.
When I said
You
we
said
need to be in the government
we
so
need
that
to
we
be in
can
the
dictate,
government so
make
we
the
can make
law.
decisions.
Yeah.
Charles said, it starts with us, and I love, being that brother. That does something, because you said, we need to be protecting our women and our children. I love a brother that will protect their women and that right there, right, as a Black man, because we don't see that a lot. We're at odds a lot of the there's so much that divides us. So to see somebody that says, no, we need to come together and you need to be protected and I'm going to be your protector, means everything to a Black woman. I can promise you that. It means everything. So I just want to acknowledge Lynn Davis. She's on your feed, Robert. She said your presence means everything. We have responsibilities as parents, and to your point, Charles. Same thing with us. My oldest son. It was always my oldest son. I would have to go in because my boys are 2 years apart. 3 boys are 2 years apart, but I would always have to go in, whatever grade he was in, and let these teachers know, because they automatically assume the worst because he's Black and he's a male. So I'd have to go in. Had to tell somebody because somebody called my son stupid and dumb, and had a whole conversation and shut the whole system down. But I said, anybody with the last name Carter up in this piece, you are going to treat them with X, Y, and Z respect. I better not ever hear you addressing to my kids with nothing less than Mr. Carter, a man of God, or brilliant. You will never call none of my kids stupid or dumb. And I never had to do that with any of my other children because they already knew you don't want to mess with their mama. But we have to do that. And it's not that I'm like that mama that be like, my baby ain't this. Because, we have those too. Baby acting the hell up, and mama will come and defend and curse out the teacher. That's not what we're talking about here. If we're involved, the whole family goes to parent-teacher conferences together. And I remember one of the teachers, after I had to read him, now that I know that you guys are involved, that was one of them things he did not mean. He was thinking, but he didn't mean to say, well, what do you mean now that you know that we're involved? So if we weren't involved, then how would you be treating my child?
Yeah.
Right. And so we have to, we just have to be proactive. I know there's a lot of single parents out there. I know that, you're working 2 or 3 jobs. You're probably commuting. You can't be engaged, but you can be engaged by an email.
Absolutely.
You can be engaged by a text. As long as they know that you're there and you're engaged, you can show up every now and then. You don't got to go to PTA. As long as they know that you care, then they're going to treat your child accordingly.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are watching in the feed right now, if you're in agreement with Charles, if you're in agreement with Lynn and Constance, I need you to put hashtag Black Excellence. Put hashtag Black Excellence in the feed, because when you acknowledge your Blackness, that is going to be intimidating to somebody. But if you acknowledge your excellence, everybody will take note and follow your lead. So I want you to put hashtag Black Excellence in the feed, because that is what we promote. That is who we are, and that is what they will listen to when they see you in your Blackness operating in excellence.
Come on,
I
Robert.
appreciate that much when I have the opportunity to say that. I want to shout out Rita Oliver, who's watching with us. My girl, Taria Vision Avant, is watching. Also, Robert Gatewood. You bringing out all the heavy hitters, Charles. You must have been saying something because you're so smart. Hashtag Black Excellence is in operation here. Constance Carter, we are talking about the 3 young people who lost their lives in the past 30 days, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Sister Breonna. They lost their lives at the hands of people who were armed, people who had perceived dominance over them. And one of the questions that we asked is that now that we've seen these 4 officers be fired, is that enough? Now that we've seen the bird watcher in New York City in Central Park, the young lady who weaponized a 911 phone call, is that enough that she lost her job? We just want to know. We want to hear from you. This is Conversation Starters, unscripted. We just felt like we needed to come and talk to the people, have this dialogue, have this conversation. But we implore you, we encourage you to take this conversation and put some action to it. We talked about gun laws and ownership. We talked about being a part of the legislative process. We talked about talking to your white friends about this conversation, raw and rugged. We talked about making sure that we teach our babies, our sons and our daughters, about what it is to operate in Black excellence and show a presence to those who see your families. Protect your last name and make sure that those that are in your household know that they are liked and loved and that they are protected, and that Black excellence will always persevere over ignorance.
Let me ask you a question, though, Charles. What do you think about this outrage, this temporary, I don't want to say fake outrage, but what do you think about this temporary outrage that we have, and then we tend to get amnesia? Like, we get up in arms when we see it, and then it just kind of fizzles and goes away, and now we turn it up again. Like, what do you think about that? And that goes from regular people to celebrities to everybody.
It's everything. They always used to say back even in the Roman Empire days is that the mob is fickle. Right. So all you have to do is change the narrative, change the mode of entertainment, and they'll forget about the atrocities that are going on with them. They'll forget about their afflictions as long as they're entertained. And that's been a system of suppression for ages. We know
just people in general. That's just how people operate.
Right. And, when we really get tired of it, we'll stop that. Right. We'll stop saying, okay, we're satisfied for a day or for a month or for a week. We'll challenge it for a day or for a month, because to be honest with you, for me, them getting fired is not enough.
Yeah.
So I think that there should be some heavy consequences for what they've done. I think that there should be some real legitimate time served. And I think that you have to send a legitimate message to not just that police department, but police departments all around the world, and to ladies that are walking in the park all around the world, that, hey, listen, this will not be tolerated, period. And if you choose to do that,
all the Karens,
then you'll have a life sentence. Then you can possibly get the death penalty. You can, all of that stuff. I think it needs to be really criminalized. I think it needs to be looked at as a form of terrorism almost. And we need to assign those type of charges to it. The same way you assign 10 years to crack, you can assign for the smallest little bit of crack.
Hey, Charles, the FBI boys are watching, the DEA and the CIA. When you say that, boy.
Listen.
No, but listen, but here's the thing, though. The narrative changes when the face of it changes.
Yeah.
Just like crack. Just like, what's the meth?
Methamphetamine.
Right? Methamphetamines, right?
Yeah.
So if it were maybe Black people that are making the phone calls, maybe the laws will change. If we're trying to, we start calling 911, they're gonna come in and arrest us. So I don't know. But you know what I'm saying? It changes when the melanin changes, right? So to your point, how is that going to change?
I think it all starts with economics. I think at the end of the day, the bottom line is how we control our economic involvement in the rest of the world, where we put our money, and that's basically how we sign our name. Right. And once we start to navigate that a little bit differently, once we start to have a collective pool of money to pull from and can actually move some things the way we want to do it, I think that things will start to change. I think, when you look at the bus boycotts, the most significant part of that was the loss of money, right, to that whole industry. And it's like, okay, well, wait a minute, we have to change some things now, because this is not just affecting how we look, but this is also affecting how we feed.
They didn't give a damn about how they look. They can look like the devil, but once you start affecting that pocketbook, that's when the things start changing. So I agree to your point. And that, right now, if you look at the wealth gap and you see that, African American wealth is at, less than $2,000, as opposed to our white counterparts, their net worth is over $100,000. So in terms of, you talk about what I was talking about earlier, if that bank takes any bank, we don't have a dog in the fight.
Right.
It's because our economics ain't right.
And it's hard to move a political agenda when you don't have the dollars to push it, right? We know that dollars push political agendas a lot nowadays.
Yeah.
And we can look at the assignments of mayors and other politicians. When you don't have a dog in the fight, why do I have to listen to you? When you're the minority vote, you're the minority who's participating financially. Everything about you says minority. Nothing about you says majority. Why do I need to listen to you?
Yeah.
And so when other people talk, they listen to them because they know that their dollars for their campaigns, their dollars for their different projects, even for the dollars for themselves are going to be where they want them to be. And it's hard to compete with that. And so we have to start organizing ourselves financially. We have to start arming ourselves with education about the political process and how we can really affect change there. We have to grow, and as soon as we start to do that, I think we'll be in a very different conversation with our counterparts.
I think
will change.
I think that's it. I think you hit it on the head. So we talk about all these things which are extra additives onto the conversation. But I think a lot of it, I mean, we are in a capitalistic country. This country is built on the foundation of capitalism. It's all about money talks, bullshit walks, right?
Right.
So that is what the bottom line is. And I know that, money's not everything, but really, he who has the money controls the bag, the narrative, the country, and everything else.
Right.
So if we can get ourselves together financially and start being investors, because that's what we teach.
Right.
And start being investors and stop being consumers, it's going to change the dynamic of our entire community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shift our mindsets. So I love that. You on the money right there. That's it right there for me.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And for those who are watching, I just want to let you know, Charles, that once you came on the feed, you have absolutely increased the engagement. You've been getting a whole bunch of write-ons from Dwayne Hazelwood, from David Lacanzo, Felix A. Cox. Taisha has been giving you amen. She's been in your choir saying, hallelujah. Also want to say what's going on to Lynn Davis, like you said, Patsy Yarborough, who's been a part, Antonio Caruth. This has been an engaging conversation. I think it's necessary. And for those of you who are tuning in for the very first time, this is Conversation Starters Unscripted. And this is the one and only Charles Johnson, who's in the middle. The cutie on duty to my left is Constance Carter, and I am Robert Antwin. And we're so pleased that you were able to be a part of this conversation. We just ask you one more favor, just to heart this thing up, put some likes in the feed. We want to make sure that the algorithm and Facebook put this out in the feed. We want some more people to be a part of this conversation.
This is an important conversation to have.
Yeah. We want to make sure that people know what we're talking about. We're not doing it for fandom or fame. We just want to make sure that this conversation is like a ripple in the water and it continues to go out. So we've already asked you to put hashtag Black Excellence, but just heart it up, give us some likes, and make sure that you support this conversation and continue it, not only with words, but with your actions. I don't know how much longer you want to go, Constance, but we've been going 62 minutes strong, and everybody has been engaged from minute number one.
Well, I really want to acknowledge a couple of people. Sean Rafer said, I'd rather have a gun and take a shot at them while they're shooting at me. We have to arm ourselves. The boy ain't playing. He ain't playing. And then a couple of other people, Felice A. Cox says, due process rights are even destroying our families who are biracial. I'm tired of all these injustices. But she also said that why is it that when we have biracial couples, they don't see Black excellence? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Who doesn't see Black excellence? Black people don't see Black excellence. The police don't see Black excellence. I'm not sure. And Brandy Cox said, because the system was not built to protect us and we have to step in and step up and take charge. We need to circulate the Black dollar, invest, and vote. Hit him where it hurts. Brandy, that's what Brandy said. What they talking about on your feed?
Businesses out there for us to do and get everything we need. In every single community, there's enough people with intelligent and good Black businesses for us to be able to work with one another. We got to get past our own personal biases about, who we are and what we can do, and get past those negative stereotypes that we hear all the time. Black people don't do good business. Find a good Black business to do business with and do business with them and promote the business the same way you promote everything else. Like, let's be about ourselves. Let's be about our people. Let's start promoting things like this that have a great impact on how we can change and move the narrative for the things that we want to discuss. This is, I love this conversation more particularly, but I love all the conversations because I think it starts to shed a different type of light on who we are, what we're capable of, and what we can do. So shout out to the both of you, honestly, for putting this on, even this one specific one, even in this time, because it's necessary and we really need to have these conversations. But the fact that you guys are pulling together different artists and different entrepreneurs and really bringing scope and a lot of different light to who we are and what we've been able to accomplish, that's huge, right? Because everybody doesn't get to see that, and that's a big thing.
That's dope. Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Charles.
Wow.
We definitely felt like this was a conversation that needed to be had.
Hey,
Rob and
listen,
I,
you know
huh?
what? I'm going to let you have the word, but what Charles said was so pointed. It's enough for us to talk about it, but we want to make sure that we do our part. While we have your attention, if you're watching in the feed, we appreciate your hearts and your likes. But right now, let's make sure that we spend Black dollars with Black businesses. So if you know a Black business right now, whether it's a photographer, whether it's a bank, whether it's a retail store, whether it's a cookie store, if you sell tennis shoes, makeup, whatever, candles, whatever it is you sell, if you know a Black business, I don't care if it's Tracy Lynn Jewelry, make sure that you put their name, maybe put their website, whatever it is that you can do to promote Black excellence on this feed. We want to take this conversation, put action to it. Make sure that you shout out a super friend, shout out somebody who's in business, so that the people in this feed right now and the people who are going to watch the replay, for those of you who are going to get to see the replay, put hashtag replay in there so that we know that you were a part of the conversation. But more importantly, make sure that you shout out a Black business, a Black business. I'm not excluding white businesses, but right now I want to make sure that hashtag Black excellence rings out all across social media. And I want to make sure that anybody that is in business and that is a Black merchant, that you shout them out right now. It's not enough for you to look. It's not enough for you to make a comment. You will really put a cherry on top of this cake if you put a Black business in the feed. So for those of you who know about Catalyst Real Estate, put that in the feed. For those of you who know anything that's happening that's in the Black community that needs your support, that needs, more importantly, your economic dollars to make a difference today. Even in the midst of this pandemic, people are still cash apping. In the midst of this pandemic, people are still buying stuff from Walmart. In the midst of this pandemic, people are still ordering from Amazon. Why don't you do what you know you need to do? Make sure that economically you support somebody that looks like you, that sounds like you, that comes from your struggle, comes from your background. Do what you know you need to do right now. Keep that money in your community and have hashtag Black excellence. I'm sorry,
Love it.
Constance. I'm done with
But
my
hey, listen, I can take a back seat to that because that's really important. And I think one of the things about, Black, we have to say this, right? Because and I've experienced it my entire life, where people say they don't do business with Black people. And that's the most asinine, foolish thing that I've ever heard. And I was at a church one day speaking, and I said, how many people have heard the words that I don't do business with Black people? Everybody in there raised their hand. And I said, you take that hand, you slap yourself upside the face. That's the dumbest shit I ever heard in my life. I didn't cuss at the church, but it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, because we will support other people in their shortcomings. We will go to a Chinese restaurant, get bad service, and still keep going to that Chinese restaurant. We will go and support everybody else, but we won't do the same thing. And you have other people who ain't supporting us, and you have your own people that say you're not going to support us. We're not saying you only have to, because you're going to support everybody anyway. But we're saying support us too. This is like, we matter too. Black lives matter too. Also, we're not saying you gotta not shop anywhere. You don't have to shop everywhere. You gotta go to Walmart, but make an effort to support somebody that looks like you.
Yeah. And real quick, while I got them out there right now, we want to talk about Leandra Lady Mackin, owner of her own clothing line, Michelle Cochran of Dope in Real Life, attorney, author, and owner of World School. Twalia is out there, Urban Pest Management from Renee McMahon, Gary Marshall Mortgage Solution. We've got Deidre Curry, owner of She Apparel. Also, we have Latoya Washington, owner of the List Tour. Woo, when I start reading these businesses, they start posting them. I can't read as fast as they're putting them in there, but my main man, Dwayne Hazelwood on Under One Media. If you're in the DME, specifically the Baltimore area, he is a dope photographer. God is Able, owner of Goody Girl, Brandy Cox. I think I'm saying that right. Gotti Able, owner of Gotti Girl.
Gotti Girl.
Mm-hmm. Gotti Girl, Brandy Cox.
Absolutely. And over there in your feed, you got Marquita said Jen's Finest Things, Jen Harmon. Did you already say that? Did you go to your feed? Vocal coach for singers and speakers. I think that was it. But the bottom line is us coming together. One of my favorite sayings, and it's up Oh, I have the chalkboard back there. And it's up on my wall. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. We can't continue to work in silos. We have to work together if we want to get far. And we can't depend on this rugged, Eurocentric capitalism, the individualism. That is not how we are going to make it in this country. We've suffered for so long. They've successfully been able to divide us. And that's how you're able to conquer, if you divide. And so if we could think beyond ourselves and think of the ultimate goal and work together, we're going to go so much further.
Amen. Well, listen, y'all, we have enjoyed every single minute, every single hour, this whole hour that you've been with us. Charles Johnson, I want to say you're a man amongst boys. I salute you. I celebrate you. I love you, brother. You are smart for real, even though you went to A&T. I want to shout out all my HBCU, in particular HU, the real HU Howard University. But for those of you who have been watching, I want you to make sure that you support Conversation Starters every Friday, 3 p.m. on the West Coast, 6 p.m. on the East Coast. And if you can't watch, make sure you share it out, tell a friend to check us out, because we are showing up bringing unscripted conversations to you. And we're getting ready to sign off. And I just want to let you know, for the very first time, if you are watching, my name is Robert Antoine, and this is
Constance Carter.
We got a special edition, and his name is
Charles Johnson.
And let me say this real quick. Hold on before you say it. Charles Johnson is the operations manager for Catalyst Real Estate Professionals. By the way, Black excellence right there.
Ooh, hashtag Black excellence. We believe that for every situation,
there is a conversation.
Hashtag Conversation Starters. We thank you for being a part of the feed. We encourage you to go out there and hashtag Black excellence all over town, in your community, and in the world. We love y'all.
Keep shouting out to these businesses. Keep shouting them out. Seeing them coming. Keep shouting them out, because we want to continue. Don't stop when the broadcast stops. Keep shouting them out. Keep shouting them out.
Absolutely. Love y'all.